Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 76 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto. And we are in the 28th chapter of the 4th canto, titled Puranjan Becomes a Woman in the Next Life. And we're in the section which we've called Puranjan Panics, because he is coming right to the moment of death. He's just on the edge. Right, and we're beginning today from verse 20. First of all, our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swananiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pastyatya Dejatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All right then. So let us begin with verse 20. We've already been through just the verses as such. Now we're doing verses and purports. So verse 20, King Puranjan continued thinking how, when he was in a state of bewilderment, his wife would give him good counsel, and how she would become aggrieved when he was away from home. Although she was the mother of so many sons and heroes, the king still feared that she would not be able to maintain the responsibility of household affairs. So let's have a look at Srila Prabhupada's purport. So here he is, Puranjan's right at the time of death, and he's thinking of his wife. This is called polluted consciousness. And Prabhupada explains in Bhagavad Gita chapter 15, verse 7, Mamaivangsa jiva loke jiva buddha sanatana manashastan indriyani prakriti stani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Then the second paragraph. So the living entity, of course, is part and parcel of Krishna. And in other words, Prabhupada says, Krishna's constitutional position and the living entity's constitutional position are the same qualitatively, in quality. They are as spiritual as each other. Quantitatively, that's a different story. We're atomic. He is, we are just microscopic, and he's unlimited. So anyway, we're struggling here with the contaminations, contaminated mind and consciousness. And because we're part and parcel of Krishna, we should think of him. But here we see Puranjan, who's one of us, living entity, is thinking of a woman. And such absorption in thinking of a sense object, that's what brings about our struggle for existence in this world. Yeah. So since Puranjan's thinking of his wife, it means his struggle for existence in the material world will not be ending with death, as many people think that, sometimes people who are just suffering terribly, and so they feel they want to end it all, to finish it all, so therefore they commit suicide, or nowadays people are being assisted, like euthanasia, assisted to leave their bodies because they're suffering so much, and they think this will put an end to my suffering, but little do they know, but shortly they will find out that their suffering will not be ending with death. So, as the following verses point out, King Peranjan had to take the body of a woman in his next life because of his absorption, thinking of his wife. So, in general, this mental absorption in social, political, pseudo-religious, national, communal consciousness is the cause for our bondage. So we have to change our activities, change our focuses to get released from that bondage. And in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada points out in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse 9, famous verse, Yagyartat karmano nyatra lokayam karma bandhana, that if we don't change our consciousness in this life, then whatever is our consciousness, whatever we're focused on, social, political, religious, communal, whatever it may be, it'll be the cause of our bondage. And then we have to continue in material life. So every life, everyone struggles to be happy, but no one is happy. But the struggle, not in every case, but in some, gives the false sense of happiness. So everyone must work hard, and if someone gets a result from his hard work, he thinks he's happy, but they don't know what is real happiness. This is described, real happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita chapter 6 verse 21. Sukham atyantikam yattad buddhigrahyam atindriyam. Prabhupada elaborates on that statement. Real happiness must be appreciated by one's transcendental senses. Unless one is purified, the transcendental senses are not manifest. Therefore, to purify the senses, you have to take to Krishna consciousness, engage the senses in the Lord's service. Then there'll be real happiness and there'll be liberation. So then there's a third paragraph in Bhagavad Gita. We just read 15.7, but now in 15.8, there's a statement that Shariram yadavapnoti yachchap yutkramatishvara grihit vaitani samyati vayorgandhan ivashayat, which means the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. So we've had experience. The wind or the air passes over a rose garden or something beautiful like that, and it carries their aroma. Even, when I was staying at the bottom, in the rooms at the bottom at the Radharanath temple, we would come in from programs in practically every evening, very often at least, And we're coming up from the car park, and just between the car park and the rooms where we were staying, there was a night blooming jasmine. So we'd come back in the evening, it's sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock or whatever, and it's night blooming. So all these little flowers, little jasmine flowers, very, very fragrant. And even when you're like 15 or 20 meters away, oh, you get this aroma. It's just amazing. But if the air or the wind passes over some filthy place, it'll carry that obnoxious stench. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, similarly, King Puranjan, the living entity, now passes the air of his life over his wife, a woman. Therefore, he has to accept the body of a woman in his next life. Verse 21, King Puranjan continued worrying. If I pass from this world, how will my sons and daughters who are now fully dependent on me, how will they live and continue their lives? Their position will be similar to that of passengers aboard a ship wrecked in the midst of the ocean. So Srila Prabhupada explains that at the time of death, generally every living entity worries about what's going to happen to his family. Politician may worry what's going to happen to my country or my party. So unless people are fully Krishna conscious, they have to take birth again according to that state of consciousness. So Puranjan was always thinking of his wife. So he's going to take birth as a woman. A politician attached to the land of his birth will be reborn in the same country, in some form or other. And sometimes politicians do very sinful activities. Sometimes they kill opponents. So they may take birth in the same country, but they'll suffer for those sinful activities. Second paragraph. Of course, the science of transmigration is completely unknown to the modern scientists and, for that matter, just about everyone. So these scientists, they don't like to bother with these things, because if they do, they'll see how bleak their futures are. Oh, Krishna. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thus they try to avoid considering the future and continue committing all kinds of sinful activities in the name of social, political, and national necessity. I've read, I was not there, but when Srila Prabhupada was in Mauritius, then he was invited by the Prime Minister, I think it is, President, Prime Minister, and who was, that gentleman was extremely nice to Srila Prabhupada. But one day Srila Prabhupada found out that day that gentleman was going to open a chicken farm where they just sort of mass produce chickens for people to eat. And Prabhupada was disgusted. All right, so verse 22. Although King Puranjan should not have lamented over the fate of his wife and children, he nonetheless did so due to his miserly intelligence. In the meantime, Yavanaraj, whose name was fear itself, immediately drew near to arrest him. So Yavanaraj is sort of sneaking up on Puranjan. So, right, Prabhupada says in the purport, fools don't know that every soul is responsible for their actions. A child, as long as a person is a child in the form of a child, then there's some element of innocence, and it's the duty of the parents to lead him to understand life, etc. But when he's grown up, then it's up to him to carry out his duties. So when he's very small, the parents will be responsible for his karma. But when he's an adult, it's up to him. He'll be responsible. And after death, the parents can't help the child. They may leave some money or some property or something, but they shouldn't be overly absorbed in how the family is going to carry on. This is the disease of the conditioned soul. Not only does he commit sinful activities for his own sense gratification, but he accumulates wealth to leave to the children for their sense gratification. Second paragraph. Anyway, one way or the other, everyone is afraid of death. Therefore, death is called bhaya, or fear. So, even though Puranjan was thinking of his wife and children, death didn't wait for him. Death doesn't wait for anyone. It just immediately carries out its duty. So since death takes the living entity without hesitation, at least for the atheists, it's the ultimate God realization. So here, in terms of practical instruction, the word atad arhanam is significant, Prabhupada says. It means one should not be overly engaged in welfare activities for the family, for the countrymen, etc., because that won't help anyone advance spiritually. Those in the human form have the opportunity to make spiritual advancement, but they remain misers, wasting their lives thinking of the material welfare of their relatives, countrymen, etc. But actually they have to learn to conquer death. And Lord Krishna talks of this in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 9, very famous verse. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvataha chaktva deham purnar janma naiti mam eti sorajuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. And there's a third paragraph that one who's fully Krishna conscious, after leaving the body, doesn't take birth again, goes back to Godhead. So everyone should try for this. But unfortunately, the vast majority are just absorbed in thoughts of society, friendship, and love. Yeah, and they take rebirth in terms of whatever they're particularly attached to. So therefore this Krishna consciousness movement is educating people how to conquer death. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Harim vina na mritim taranti. One cannot conquer death without taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So onto the fourth section, and which we call Puranjan, taken away by Yavanaraj, gives up his body. So this is it. It's the final the final sort of climax, or whatever you might say. He's actually about to leave his body right now and be taken away by the Yavanaraj. Verses 23. When the Yavanars were taking King Puranjan away to their place, binding him like an animal, the king's followers became greatly aggrieved. While they lamented, they were forced to go along with him. 24. The serpent, who had already been arrested by the soldiers of Yavanaraj and was out of the city, began to follow his master along with the others. As soon as they all left the city, it was immediately dismantled and smashed to dust. The whole city was destroyed, the body of Puranjan. Verse 25, when King Puranjan was being dragged with great force by the powerful Yavana, out of his gross ignorance, he still could not remember his friend and well-wisher, the super soul. Verse 26, that most unkind king Puranjan had killed many animals in various sacrifices. Now, taking advantage of this opportunity, all these animals began to pierce him with their horns. It was as though he were being cut to pieces by axes. 27. Due to his contaminated association with women, a living entity like King Puranjan eternally suffers all the pangs of material existence and remains in the dark region of material life, bereft of all remembrance for many, many years. That's that section. Let's go back and read the verses with their purports. So it's section 4, verse 23 to 28. Puranjan, taken away by Yavanaraj, gives up his body. 23. When the Yavanas were taking King Puranjan away to their place, binding him like an animal, the king's followers became greatly aggrieved. While they lamented, they were forced to go along with him. So now Srila Prabhupada begins the purport. Not quite begins, it's just down a few lines. Actually, Prabhupada says, the third sentence, when the living entity is taken away or arrested by Yamaraj, tam utkramantam, from the verse, the life air also goes with him, prano nutkramati. And when the life air is gone, pranam anutkramantam, all the senses, sarve prana, also go along, anutkramanti. Right, so when the living entity and the life air are actually gone, then the lump of matter of the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, means the body, is rejected and left behind. Then the living entity goes to Yamaraj for some decision, what sort of body he'll take in the next life. And of course, this process is unknown to modern scientists. So therefore, although the gross body is left behind, the living entity and his desires and reactions go on. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, it is Yamaraj who decides what kind of body one gets next, in accordance with one's past activities, past actions. Verse 24, the serpent, who'd already been arrested by the soldiers of Yavanaraj, and was out of the city, began to follow his master along with the others. As soon as they all left the city, it was immediately dismantled and smashed to dust. Right, yes, so they left the city means they all left the body. So then the body just was smashed, finished. So let's have a look at Prabhupada's purport here. When the living entity is arrested, all of his followers, the life air, the senses, and the sense objects, immediately leave the lump of matter, which is the body. The body, because the body no longer works, therefore it returns to its basic elemental condition. So when the city, which was attacked by the enemies, is vacated, the enemy smashes the city. In other words, that the body is smashed. So when it said, "Dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return," we refer to the body. When the city is attacked by the enemies, the citizens leave, and then the city gets smashed up and it ceases to exist. Second paragraph. So a fool would improve the condition of the city without caring about the citizens. So a similarly living entity who's not spiritually enlightened simply takes care of the body and doesn't look after the soul, doesn't know the soul is the principal factor. So therefore the Bhagavatam 1084:13 says that those who are attached to their bodies are like cows and asses. Cows and asses. Let me just read the translation. A human being who identifies this body made of three elements with his self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to a place of pilgrimage simply to take bath, rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there. So that human being is to be considered like an ass or a cow. So third paragraph, human civilization devoid of Krishna consciousness is simply a civilization of lower animals, really. Sometimes that civilization may study the dead body and consider the brain, the heart, but actually no part, well, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, no part of the body is important unless the spirit soul is present. In a modern civilization of cows and asses, scientists tried to search out some value in the brain or heart of a dead man. Just like very recently, some sort of space vehicle which had landed, as I understand, on an asteroid flying through space and took some dust or rock or whatever it may be from that part of that asteroid and then came back to Earth. And now they've got this whatever it is from the asteroid. And I read like a week or two ago that now they're studying this stuff from the asteroid and they feel it may help them understand the origin of life. so stupid. It's just a rock and it's going to help us understand the origin of life. Verse 25, when King Puranjan was being dragged with great force by the powerful Yavana, out of his gross ignorance, he still could not remember his friend and well-wisher, the super soul. Prabhupada makes the point, this is a very interesting point. that a person can be in full Krishna consciousness if they simply know Bhagavad Gita chapter 5 verse 29, which Prabhupada quotes right at the beginning of the purport of this verse 25. Famous verse. Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarva bhutanam gyatvamam shantam rijati. That a person can be fully Krishna conscious and be happy and satisfied if he just knows three things. That Krishna is the enjoyer of all benefits or sacrifices and austerities, that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, and that he is the supreme friend of all living beings. Yeah. If you don't know this, and if you're living under the bodily conception, you're just going to be always harassed by the difficulties of material life. So actually the Lord is with us, as Bhagavad Gita 18:61 says, within our hearts. But despite the difficulties of life and material nature, we don't turn towards him for protection. We think we can protect ourselves, but it's just not possible. Only by surrendering to Krishna will we be slaved from the onslaught of the Yavana or from Yamaraj, the second paragraph. So the word Sakayam, friend, Prabhupada says, is very significant here. And also Suridam, they are they just mean the same thing. Sakaya means friend, Suridam means ever well-wisher. So that's the Lord. He's always our friend, he's always our well-wisher, just like parents. Even though sometimes the son or daughter may offend the parents, but they're always the son's or daughter's well-wisher. So similarly, despite our offenses and our defiance towards the Lord, He'll give us immediate relief from the hardships of material life if we just surrender to him. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, verse 14, another famous verse which we came across just a few days ago, it confirms Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya dharachya mama eviye prapadyante mayametam tarantitem. That although this material nature is divine energy, material nature is very difficult to overcome, but one who surrenders unto me can be immediately delivered. So, but Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, unfortunately, due to our bad association and great attachment for sense gratification, we do not remember our best friend, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Verse 26. That most unkind king, Puranjan, had killed many animals in various sacrifices. Now, taking advantage of this opportunity, all these animals began to pierce him with their horns. It was as though he were being cut to pieces by axes. So, the enthusiasts for killing animals in the name of religion or food will get similar punishment after death. Yeah, the word mamsa, which means meat, indicates that those animals we kill will get the chance to kill us. Mamsa. Mam means me, sa means he. Me, he. Me, I killed him, he. Now he will get the chance to kill me. So, of course, spiritually, no entity is killed. But still, when you identify with the body, the pains of being pierced by the horns of animals will be experienced. Yeah. And of course, many slaughterhouses are there. Oh. And those who are more religious kill animals in temples or mosques or synagogues, whatever. But those who are more degraded, they kill animals, have them killed in slaughterhouses. But in human society, the law is a life for a life. No living entity can encroach on another one as far as the Lord is concerned. So therefore, everyone should live at the expense of the Father, Krishna, and know that animal killing is always condemned by the Lord, either for religion or for food. Yes. So in Bhagavad Gita 16, chapter 16, verse 19, Krishna says, I'll just read the translation, those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the animal killers, dvishata, envying other living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are placed in darkness and cannot understand the theme and objective of life. Yeah. This is further explained in the following verses. So let's go into them. Next is verse 27. Due to his contaminated association with women, a living entity like King Paranjan eternally suffers all the pangs of material existence and remains in the dark region of material life, bereft of all remembrance for many, many years. So their devotees, Prabhupada says in his purport, this is a description of material existence. That material existence is experienced when you're very attached to a woman, forget your real identity as Krishna's servant. So then going from body to body, the living entity suffers perpetually the threefold miseries. Miseries of one's own body and mind, miseries coming from other living beings, and miseries coming from material nature or the demigods, you can say. So this Krishna consciousness movement was started to save humanity from this ignorance. The main purpose is to enlighten the forgetful living entities and remind them of their original Krishna consciousness. This is how the living entities can be saved. Otherwise, it's a catastrophe. Just a catastrophe, or worse. Yeah. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, Anadi karma pale, padi bhavarna vajale, tari bare ne deki upai, e vishaya halahale, divanishi hiya jwale, manakabu sukha nahipai. Which means, because of my past fruitive activities, I have now fallen into an ocean of nescience. I cannot find any means to get out of this great ocean, which is indeed like an ocean of poison. We're trying to be happy through sense enjoyment, but actually that so-called enjoyment is like food that is too hot and causes burning in the heart. I feel a burning sensation constantly day and night, and thus my mind cannot find satisfaction. So, second paragraph, material existence full of anxiety. People are trying to mitigate, reduce the anxieties, avoid them, or deal with them somehow. But because they have no good leader, they can't. They just try to forget through drinking and sex life. They don't know that by doing that, drinking liquor and having sex, they're simply increasing the duration of their material lives. It's just not possible to escape material anxiety in that way. So third paragraph, Prabhupada points out that the word pramada sangha dushita indicates that apart from all other contaminations, the single contamination of remaining attached to a woman is sufficient to prolong material existence, miserable material existence. So therefore in Vedic civilization, one is trained from the beginning to give up attachment to women. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the first stage of life is brahmachari, second stage grihastha, third stage vanaprastha, and fourth stage sannyas. All these stages are devised to enable one to detach himself from the association of women. Wow, Prabhupada is really emphasizing this. All right, so here we go, devotees, on to the next section, verse 28. It's section 5. In his next life, Puranjan is born as the daughter of King Vidarbha. Verse 28. Okay, so let's just read through. King Puranjan gave up his body while remembering his wife, and consequently in his next life, he became a very beautiful and well-situated woman. He took his next birth as the daughter of King Vidarbha in the very house of the king. Okay, so Prabhupada in the first paragraph of the purport, he makes the point that this verifies the famous verse in Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, verse 6. Puranjan thought of his wife at the time of death, got the body of a woman in his next life, and this is the principle that Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, verse 6 is talking about. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajat yante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kontaya sadata bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. So there's a second paragraph in which Prabhupada makes the point that, and a third paragraph too, that when a living entity is accustomed to think of some subject, absorbed in it, then he'll think of it at the time of death. So whatever you're occupied with during your life, while awake, while lightly sleeping, dreaming, deep sleep, that will be remembered. So after falling from the association of the Supreme Lord, living entity, Prabhupada says, transmigrates until reaching the human form. Yeah. So if then in the human form, if he's absorbed in material thoughts, not taking shelter of the Lord, he will tend to become a woman, especially if he thinks of his wife. But, the attraction of male for female and female for male is so strong that it tends to be the main attraction, the main type of attachment. So Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31:1 says, Karmana Daiva Netrena. The living entity acts piously, impiously, sometimes both. It's all taken into account, and then he's given a new body in those terms. So although Puranjan was overly attached to his wife, he also did many pious activities. So he took the form of a woman, but not just any woman. He was given the chance to be the daughter of a king. And Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita chapter 6 verse 41, which makes the point that someone who's unsuccessful in yoga may go to higher planets for some time, but then he's born into a family of righteous people like devotees, or into a family of rich aristocracy, and from those situations it's possible to take up Krishna consciousness again. So Prabhupada, in the third paragraph, Prabhupada makes the point. If a person falls from devotional service due to material attachment, due to attachment to fruitive activity, or philosophical speculation, or mystic yoga, he's given a chance to take birth in a high family. So therefore he gets justice according to his desires, Prabhupada says. The conclusion is that all of our activities are taken into consideration before we're given a new body. Therefore, Narada Muni, in the first canto, advised Vyas, everyone should take to Krishna consciousness and abandon all ordinary occupational duties. And Lord Krishna says exactly the same. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, although a devotee may fall down from the path of spiritual consciousness, he'll nonetheless attain a human body in the home of a devotee or a rich man. In this way, one can resume his devotional service. So, okay, that verse was on its own, a section on its own. So now we go on to section 6, very interesting, because now Puranjan is the daughter of King Vaidarbha. So she is now Vaidarbhi. Father is Vaidarbha, the daughter is Vaidarbhi. So, yes, so section 6, verse 29 to 32, Malaya Dwaja, who's a big king, Malaya Dwaja marries Vaidarbhi. So let us read through verse 29. It was fixed that Vaidarbhi, the daughter of King Vaidarbha, was to be married to a very powerful man, Malaya Dwaja, an inhabitant of the Pandu country. After conquering other princes, he married the daughter of King Vidarbha. Verse 30. King Malaya Dwaja fathered one daughter who had very black eyes. He also had 7 sons who later became rulers of that tract of land known as Dravida. Thus, there were 7 kings in that land. Yeah. All right, so on we go. Next verse 31. My dear King Prachinabarhi Shat, the sons of Malaya Dwaja gave birth to many thousands and thousands of sons, and all of these have been protecting the entire world up to the end of one Manu's lifespan, and even afterward. 32. The great sage named Agastya married the firstborn daughter of Malayadwaja, the avowed devotee of Lord Krishna. From her one son was born, whose name was Dridachyuta, and from him another son was born, whose name was Idmavaha. Okay, so those are the verses in this section. Let's go back through in detail. So verse 29. It was fixed that Vaidarabi, now remember, this was Puranjan in the previous life, as we've just been reading in quite a bit of detail. This was Puranjan. Now Puranjan is Vaidarabi, daughter of King Vidarbha. So it was fixed that she would be married to a very powerful man, Malayadwaja, an inhabitant of the Pandu country. After conquering other princes, he married the daughter of King Vidarbha. So Prabhupada makes the point that, we've discussed it before in the Bhagavatam. It was customary for princesses to be offered in marriage under certain conditions. For example, Draupadi was offered to whoever could pierce the fish by reflection. Krishna married one of the queens, at least, after conquering 7 bulls. So the same sort of system was there with Vaidarabi, because Malayadwaja, and then Malayadwaja, who was a very powerful king and great devotee, so he fulfilled all the requirements. So actually the name Malayadwaja signifies a great devotee who stands as firm as the Malaya hills, and through preaching makes others devotees as firm as he is. Such a Mahabhaga can prevail over others. So a strong devotee makes propaganda against all other spiritual conceptions, karmis, jnanis, yogis. Flying the devotional flag, dwaja indicates a flag. He stands fast to conquer other conceptions of transcendental realization. So whenever there's an argument between a devotee and a non-devotee, the pure, strong devotee comes out victorious. So Prabhupada points out in the second paragraph, the word pandya comes from panda, meaning knowledge. Unless you're highly learned, you can't conquer non-devotional conceptions. So the word para means transcendental, and pura means a city. So Parapura is Vaikuntha, and Jaya means one who can conquer. This means pure devotee who is strong in devotional service, who has conquered all non-devotional conceptions, can also conquer the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha, just by devotional service. The Lord is called Ajita, unconquerable, but the devotee, by a strong devotional service and sincere attachment to the Lord, can easily conquer the Lord, Prabhupada says. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Lord Krishna is fear personified for everyone, but he voluntarily agreed to fear the stick of Mother Yashoda. Krishna, God, cannot be conquered by anyone but his devotee. Such a devotee kindly married the daughter of King Vidarbha, who happened to have been Puranjan. So verse 30, Malayadwaja fathered a daughter who had very black eyes. He also had 7 sons who later became rulers of the tract of land known as Dravida, normally would mean South India. Thus there were 7 kings in that land. So Malaya Dwaja, from the purport, Malaya Dwaja was a great devotee and gave Vaidarabi a daughter whose eyes were black. Means the daughter also had devotional service because her eyes were fixed on Krishna. No vision other than Krishna. This is why her eyes were black. So the 7 sons and 7 processes of devotional service. 7 sons. There are 9, but 7 are given here. Yeah. Hearing, chanting, remembering, offering worship, offering prayers, rendering transcendental loving service, and serving the lotus feet of the Lord. So there are 9 actually, but only 7 are given. The balance, friendship and surrendering everything, they'll be developed later. In other words, Prabhupada says devotional service is divided into 2 categories, Vidhi Marg and Rag Marg. And becoming friends with the Lord and sacrificing everything for him, they're part of Rag Marg, the stage of, Prabhupada says, developed devotional service, much more advanced. So for the neophytes, that's us. Most important are hearing and chanting, and then remembering Krishna, worshipping the deity, praying, engaging always in service and worshipping his lotus feet. So, okay, second paragraph, Prabhupada says the word yaviyasa indicates these processes are very powerful. And after the devotee does the first 7 and it becomes and secures them, he can later become capable of rendering spontaneous devotional service, Sakyam and Atman Nivedanam. Prabhupada says generally all the acharyas who preach all over the world belong to the category of Sakyam Atma Nivedanam, means the Rag Marg, spontaneous devotional service. And Prabhupada makes the point, the neophyte, Prabhupada says the neophyte cannot exactly become a preacher. Yeah, cannot actually become a preacher. Therefore, he's advised to execute the first 7 processes, and if he can successfully do them, in the future he can come to the level of Sakyam Atma Nivedanam, or spontaneous devotional service, Rag Marg. So in the 3rd paragraph, yes, Prabhupada mentions how the mention of Dravida Desh refers to the 5 Dravida Deshas in South India. And they're all the people living there and just the whole atmosphere. All the devotional service going on there is very strong in rendering the 7 preliminary processes. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, some great acharyas like Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya also came from Dravida Desh and became great preachers. They were all situated on the platform of Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. So there's still a couple of verses, is it 2 or 1? Couple of verses, it would take too long for us to read them right now. So we'll carry on tomorrow with verse 31. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.